Hello, everyone. It is time to begin today's scheduled webinar. I appreciate your attendance today. My name is Ryan Pearson with Electronic Data Solutions. Today's webinar is covering how Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS may be used for recording field activities relating to other pests and vectors. We'll be providing examples of how the software can be configured to support data collection and mapping for other control efforts beyond mosquito control. As I mentioned, my name is Ryan Pearson with Electronic Data Solutions. This webinar is scheduled for about 30 minutes. We do greatly appreciate your time and attendance today. The webinar today will include a short PowerPoint to introduce this presentation. The majority of today's webinar will include demonstrations of how to configure FieldSeeker GIS and Sentinel GIS to support field workflows for managing other species beyond mosquitoes, such as rodents or fire ants or others. This session is being recorded and will be available shortly on our YouTube channel for viewing or reviewing at your convenience. With that introduction, one last thing, because of the size of the group today on this call, we do have everyone placed on mute. However, we do want to answer any questions you may have during today's presentation. In the GoToWebinar dialog on your screen is a panel where you can pose questions to the presenters. Please, during today's presentation, just enter those questions into that panel, and at various times through the presentation today, I'll stop and answer those questions. Once again, we appreciate your time and attendance today. We'll begin the presentation now. Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS, we have users online we have users of both products on this call right now. But Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS are both software solutions to meet the needs of traditional mosquito control organizations. This includes tools based around best workflows and practices for surveillance activities, larviciding, service request, and adulticiding. These are the foundation for integrated mosquito management. With the surveillance tools, we are referring to trapping and species identification and disease testing. With larviciding, we're referring to site inspections and identification, and pesticide applications when necessary, as well as pulling samples that can be later processed in a laboratory. Service request includes the tools for recording incoming calls from the public, assigning those to a technician for field inspection and any other necessary work. And then ULV adulticiding. With today's presentation, we'll be focusing upon the surveillance workflow, the larviciding workflow, and the service request workflow as it would pertain to other pest management beyond traditional mosquito control activities. We won't be looking at ULV adulticiding. Many organizations control more than just mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, of course, are a vector of disease and can be a nuisance, and there's a lot of time and effort spent in monitoring populations and controlling. But some of our customers also are responsible for other pests and vectors, such as ticks, rodents, birds, fire ants, black flies, wasps, invasive organisms, even invasive weeds. So today's presentation is catered specifically to those who do more than mosquito control and are required to monitor populations of other vectors and pests, as well as control and laboratory work. From our recent blog post, I just wanted to read this. FieldSeeker GIS and Sentinel GIS both provide extensive tools for working with other vectors besides mosquitoes. We'll show you some examples. That said, there may be specific data that needs to be collected for certain vectors that is not currently provided. If that's the case, we'd love to hear from you so that we can talk about enhancing the products to support your workflow. I wanted to include that quote from our blog post to just emphasize that today we'll be showing you how we can use the customization and configuration tools and the workflow within Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS to address many additional data collection needs you may have. However, what we demonstrate today may not meet all of your data collection needs for these other pests and vectors. In that instance, we would love to hear from you to discuss what your specific workflow, your specific requirements, so that we may be able to enhance our products to address those needs. FieldSeeker GIS and Sentinel GIS are both very highly configurable software solutions. This includes a service request type or category that we'll be working on or demonstrating in both Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS. These will be user-defined pick lists as well. This would include activity type or trap type, species, whether it be a different species type, equipment type, sample collections, and miscellaneous activities that you can record while in the field. Today's demonstration will look at how to configure and define these different pick lists and category types and how they might be used for pest control. So with that, I'm going to start the demo, but before I do the demo, I wanted to ask a poll question. We do have a rather large group on the line, but I did want to ask a poll just to find out how many here are involved in other, so it looks like my polls are not associated. I assume that most everybody that is on the line right now is here because of being involved in pest control activities beyond mosquito control. Looks like the polls I created weren't associated correctly, so we'll be able to get poll data. I'll just assume that everybody on the line is interested in using these software tools for more than mosquito control. So with that introduction, I'll go ahead and do a demo. I'm going to start, because we do have two products, both Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS, I'm going to, rather than jumping between products, I'm going to focus specifically upon Sentinel GIS first and how it may be configured to support pest control activities. Once I'm finished with that demonstration, I will then switch to FieldSeeker GIS and once again demonstrate how it may be configured and used to support pest control workflows. Let me pull up Sentinel GIS here. We'll start in the desktop application. For those unfamiliar, for those who are using FieldSeeker GIS and are unfamiliar with Sentinel GIS, let me give a brief introduction. Sentinel GIS is an extension to the Esri ArcGIS desktop PC software platform. Sentinel GIS can be viewed as this toolbar that are designed specifically for organizations involved in mosquito vector pest control. The tools are organized based on activities, whether you be adult sighting, larviciding, conducting surveillance, or responding to customer service requests. As I mentioned, we won't be looking at the adult sighting tools because they don't have much bearing on most of our customers' workflows for pest control. The rest of this application, all the tools you see up in the upper left, on the top, on the side, those are the standard Esri ArcGIS tools. The tools we'll be looking at specifically are here in this toolbar. Let me start by showing some configuration tools that may be configured to support data collection activities for pest control. Starting with the larviciding tools, I'm going to go down to this mobile application configuration utility that allows us to set up pick lists to configure the mobile application that would be used by field technicians. This includes some general settings like what type of measurement system do you wish to use, how much data historical data do you wish to carry on the field with you. I'm going to jump over to my pick list first. This tab will show me the pick list that can be configured specific to my operational needs. For example, I can come right into my activity code. This activity code is one field we would highly recommend that you modify to support your pest control activities. Activity code, the way I have it configured right now, just shows what kind of activity I would be doing in the field. I can change and modify this pick list to address pest control activities versus mosquito control activities. By doing this, by customizing this activity code, I then can generate reports specific to my mosquito control activities and reports specific to my pest control activities. Very simple tool here. So, for example, I have as activity codes, I have mechanical routine inspection service request treatment. I can modify this to include rodent trap station, wasp locations, any type of additional work that's beyond what I have listed there already. That's one example of a configurable pick list that could really help and enhance those involved in pest control that are using our software currently. Another way to look at this would be treatment equipment types. You may have different equipment that would be used for rodent control versus mosquito control. You'd be able to add that equipment to this pick list, and then you'd be able to generate reports based upon this equipment as well. How many sites were treated with this equipment, how many acres, however you want to address those needs. I'll demonstrate this on the handheld device here momentarily. I just wanted to show you the configuration. We could also even look at habitat types, where habitat types could be configured to meet additional habitat types specific to the pests that you are also responsible for controlling and monitoring. Right now I have a list of common habitat types for mosquitoes, but this could be modified very easily to the needs of those involved in pest control. Another field I wanted to look at would be this products tab. Here we have a list of products that are typically used for mosquito control. Those involved in pest control often used EPA registered products for controlling those pests. Here's where you enter the information on the product that you would be using for pest control so that it appears in the pick list as technicians are in the field conducting their work. So as long as the product is registered with the EPA, all the information can be entered here into this form and then made available to your technicians in the field for use when controlling those pests. That is a configuration for our larviciding or site inspection tools. Let me show you some tools that we would use for surveillance, for trapping these pests, disease laboratory work that goes along with that. And then we'll look at our service requests, how we can respond to customer service requests through configuration. So in surveillance, I'm going to do the same thing where I can come into my application configuration utility. This configures the desktop application and the mobile application with pick lists, configurable pick lists. Let me jump over here. There's a number of things I wish to show here. In our pick list, we have the ability to, for example, set up what trap types we'll be using. The traps that I have listed in this view here are primarily mosquito control type traps, but we could put in other trap types as well for other pests and vectors. So when we're in the field and place a trap, we would be able to select the correct trap type from this drop-down list, whether it be a pest control trap or a mosquito control trap. That's an example of a configurable pick list that can be modified to supplement your operations. Same thing with diseases. The diseases I have listed are that would be tested for in the laboratory are primarily mosquito control. Diseases carried by mosquitoes. We can add that to include, for example, Rocky Mountain spotted fever in the case of tick management. we certainly can modify this to include other vector-borne diseases, whether it be from black flies or whatever might be the vector you're responsible for controlling. The test methods, they should be the same, but we'd be able to specify what type of test was used to determine disease in the samples. The other one I want to show is we have this configurable drop-down list for bird species. Right now I have different species of birds that would be collected in the field and brought back to the laboratory, or just identified as being in the field. We can configure this bird species list type to any species, whether it be rats or lucia or other rodents, wasps, fire ants, ticks. We could actually modify this to include any type of species that we would be monitoring and collecting information about. Here in the mosquitoes, we have a list of specifically mosquito species, but we could actually include codes and species information for other species. And the last thing we have is we have the tools for managing chicken flocks. So if there are diseases that you monitor through bloodletting from organisms, then we could actually manage that information to these chicken sentinel flock tools as well. That's just some examples in the surveillance configuration. Let me show you now in service request. Once again, I'll pull up my application configuration utility. Once I'm done with service request, I'll pull up a handheld device and demonstrate some tools for you. In the select list type, the thing we want to look at is our problem targets. Here we can, as a customer calls in and requests assistance, or a field technician goes to a site and notices that there's a pest that needs to, that you may want to be monitoring, the service request can be created, and you can assign a problem target species to that service request. Here I have examples of different pests beyond mosquitoes that you may be monitoring and controlling in your territory. So as we create service requests and submit them for field technicians to respond to, these can be easily identified. So that's an example of some of the the configurable data collection for fields in the forms that could be used and modified to support pest control activities in Sentinel GIS. Let me close this out, and then I'll show you how this carries over to both the service request creation form on the desktop and also to the field device. Let's start with the service request application on the desktop. Excuse me. As calls come in, you'd be able to enter the name of that person, their phone number, their address, zip code. But under here, you can assign a target species. This is the target species we were looking at in that configurable pick list. If I was going to be responding to some ants, some fire ants, that imported fire ants, I'd select that there as a target species. When the service request is submitted to the field technician, they know it's a fire ants request and would be prepared to go in and do a site inspection and any control that was needed. So I wanted to show that really quickly. Let me now jump onto a handheld device, show you how these tools would be used by a field technician for recording pest control activities. I have Sentinel GIS larva sighting pull up, so I'll look at the tools specific to larva sighting. Some of the things we can do in our site form, we can actually have habitat types that are specific to the pest that we're trying to control. So right now I have some general habitat types, but we can actually create a subset of habitat types specific to pest control activities beyond mosquito control. So I want to show that. Let me close out of here. Let's look at a site inspection form. The site inspection form, there's a number of places where we can record data specific to pest control activities. I have to choose a site condition before I can go into the other tabs. So let me choose that. When we get into our activity form, here's where I can choose an activity that we're doing. This is the configurable pick list where I can have activities specific to pest control work rather than the general ones that I have here in my configuration tools. So this is where we'd be able to record a specific activity related to the pest that we're monitoring, that we're inspecting. Beyond that, in our inspection form, we also have this comments field where we can type in anything related to the work that we've done there. And the last thing I want to point out, we didn't have a configuration for it in the configuration tool. We have the ability to pull samples that will be taken back to the lab. Normally this is a sample that would be created for larval identification, but this could be used for any organism sample or tissue sample that we want to carry back to the lab for processing. So we have this laboratory sample tool that could be valuable for pest control as well. And then when we jump into our treatment form, this is where we record any pesticide application based on those pick list configuration that we did on the desktop. So here I have to choose a product before I can get into these other tabs on the bottom. Let me just choose a product. Let me see how much product I should be using. Anywhere from 7 to 28 pounds. To treat an area that size. So let's put in 10 pounds of product. Excuse me. Once I've got the 10 pounds of product, I can come into these other tabs, which should be site information. Here's where I can put in my environmental conditions. Here's where I would get into my activity tab again, where I can record an activity specific to pest control. This is the same activity I was looking at before, where it could be specific to pest control and mosquito control rather than generalized like I have now. And we can also record the equipment type that we were using. This is where we can have equipment specific to pest control activities versus mosquito control activities. Any of these fields that I've shown can be a filter based on the reporting tools, so we can generate reporting tools specific to pest control activities. So with that, that's just a highlight of how both the field application and the desktop application can be modified to support pest control activities. Since the workflow between mosquito control, inspecting, trapping, and treating is very similar to pest control activities, many of these tools can be adapted to pest control activities. That's really what I'm trying to emphasize in today's webinar. Let me now switch to FieldSeeker GIS and show you some of these tools in FieldSeeker. So FieldSeeker GIS has a similar set of tools that can be used for configuration. This includes tools for processing surveillance data. Let me show you a few tools here very quick. Under configuration, we have the same kind of capability that I demonstrated in Sentinel GIS for FieldSeeker GIS. For example, here in service request, we have the ability to have this request target that can be more than just mosquitoes. This is the target for the service request as it's being created. Any field notes, this is where you'd have field notes that were specific to pest control activities on a service request form. Under location, we'd be able to have habitat type that could actually be modified to include habitat specific to pest control. Use type, we could actually have this modified beyond what we have here into use type specific to pest control. Under mosquitoes, we have our diseases. These would be the diseases that would be tested. We could actually include things such as I mentioned previously, the Rocky Mountain spotted fever. What type of activity did we do on site? So this would be a pest control activity versus mosquito control activity or maintenance. What kind of action was scheduled or was taken place while you were there? Once again, it's going to be configured to meet the reporting needs of pest control activities. Treatment equipment type, we looked at this before. Treatment method, could be modified as well. And then, of course, trap types. What kind of trap was used in your pest control activities? That's just a quick look there. We can come into our products. We do the same thing where we would add the products, the pesticides we'd use for pest control versus mosquito control. Right now we have this pulled up where we would have it for larviciding, but we could actually include this for traditional pest control. Here's where we have our mosquito species. We put in the species of the pests that we are actually monitoring and controlling so that reports can be generated, especially after laboratory work is completed. And then the important one here, which is a little unique to FieldSeeker GIS, is we have the ability to have user-defined fields. So in this instance, under the polygon location, we actually have some information on fire ants. So these are forms for a polygon location specific to fire ant control in California. So here's a pick list. This is an example of how FieldSeeker GIS can have these user-defined fields in their data collection form specific to a pest. So you have these special services here for locations where fire ant inspections are being conducted. So this is a great tool in FieldSeeker GIS for creating or collecting additional information required for your work that may not be supported in the traditional FieldSeeker GIS user templates. That's what I wanted to show there. So with that, let me show you some surveillance tools. This is the laboratory tools that we would use for processing some of this data that's coming back. This is adult mosquito trapping. This is where we would trap adult mosquitoes, but we would actually have data in here potentially from other trap types for rodents or wasps or fire ants. Here's our sample data. This is larval samples. These are samples brought back to the laboratory for species identification. This once again could be more than what we have here. The field species was identified as Culex. We could have had a rodent or pest species in there rather than mosquitoes Culex. Then the laboratory results shows what that species was when we come back in with better identification. And then our sample collections are any tissue or organism samples that can be processed in the laboratory. This could be blood, could be tissue, could be an entire organism that are brought back for further processing in the laboratory. Once again, any of these fields that we're collecting can be used as filters in reporting to generate reports specific to your pest control activities. I just wanted to show you that there's some options in the laboratory tools to address pest control activities. Let me exit out of here. If we create a service request, let me just show you how we create a service request. I'll type in an address. This is our company headquarter address. Search for that. It'll find some points. It'll come up. I can select one of these points and create a service request at that location. And in here, this is where I have the information that would help. This would be that target species from that list that we were looking at, whether it be rodents, imported fire ants, rats, flies, or mosquitoes. Customizable list, create the service request, enter additional notes as needed, and send it off to our technicians. So I want to show that functionality. What I want to do now is connect a mobile device. I'm going to connect up my iPad real quick and then show you the tools that would be used by technicians in the field in FieldSeeker. So give me just 1 minute here to get the iPad connected and then get it displayed on my screen. Let me pause showing my screen for just a moment while I get this set up. And hopefully this will work where you can see it. It may not work when I'm connected and projecting already. I should have tested this out. I apologize for that. Looks like this real-time desktop isn't going to work the way I had hoped it would to show my to show this iPad with these tools. In any regard, I demonstrated most of those tools using Sentinel GIS, and FieldSeeker GIS is very similar. You would record your activity. What kind of activity was I doing on this site inspection? What kind of species was found? What kind of product was used in any treatment? What kind of traps were placed, whether they be mosquito traps or pest control traps. Very, very similar workflow with modified and configured tick lists to support pest control activities. We are running out of time. Let me just pull up my last couple PowerPoint slides. I do have another quote from that recent blog post I wish to share with you. Again, from our recent blog post, many vector control workflows are similar enough: inspection, surveillance, treatment, lab results, etc., that the standard tools in Sentinel GIS or FieldSeeker GIS cover it. However, some data collection is more specific than what can be accounted for in configuration, and may require its own data collection form. This could either be incorporated into FieldSeeker or Sentinel GIS, or built as a separate collection project using Collector for ArcGIS, Survey 123, or some other tool. So once again, the workflows between many pest control activities and mosquito control activities are similar enough that our standard tools in Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS may likely cover your requirements. In the event that it doesn't, we can work with you to further enhance our traditional software tools to support it, or use another third-party tool such as Collector for ArcGIS, Survey 123 to address those needs. So in summary, the mosquito control workflow fits many vectors. I should have said pests and vectors. Our software solutions, both FieldSeeker GIS and Sentinel GIS, are very highly configurable. Many tick lists can be modified to support your pest control requirements. In the event that Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS don't meet all of your expected pest control requirements, then the Esri platform can help address some of those shortcomings. And I'm talking about using tools such as Collector for ArcGIS as perhaps a tool that you can use for creating forms specific to your workflows. In any regard, we really want you to contact us with your specific workflow needs. There's a large group of folks on the line, many involved in pest control and weed control. If there's something missing in the forms that we have that are preventing you from adopting our technology to address those workflows, then let us know. We really want to work with you to enhance our products, to make sure that it's meeting the needs of those involved not only in mosquito control, but those same organizations involved in other pest control and weed control activities. With that, that is all I have for the presentation. My contact information, Ryan Pearson, is found on this slide. Chad Mintier, unfortunately, wasn't able to join us today. His contact information is there as well. I think many of you have worked with Chad on support and implementation issues, but his contact information is there. I'm going to check real fast to see if any questions have been posed in the questions dialog before we end today's webinar. Once again, let me just state this webinar has been recorded and will be available for viewing shortly on our YouTube channel. If you wish to review this or share this presentation with others, that would be a good way to access the presentation and provide it to others. In the questions dialogue, I don't see any questions that have been posed at this point. I'll give you just another moment to enter any of those if you do wish to ask a question. Once again, the presentation may have been a little jumping around a little bit, showing you a lot of different tools. What I wish to emphasize is just one simple point. Both Sentinel GIS and FieldSeeker GIS can be easily configured to address additional data collection requirements you may have for pest control activities. Contact us. We can help you determine the best way to configure the application to meet your workflow needs. In the event that the workflows that we have in place, the forms we have in place don't meet your needs, we would be happy to work with you to enhance our products to support that. With that, no questions have been submitted, so I'm just going to close. Thank you very much for attending today, for your time and attention. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. I want to wish you a very happy day. Thank you. Goodbye.